What really happens inside Altcourse Prison, Britain's most controversial jail? The cell that shouldn't exist. Before we begin, if you want more deep dive crime stories like this, hit subscribe, tap like, drop a comment, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Now let's step inside Altcourse Prison. The night it began, Liverpool was wrapped in a cold, blue haze, the kind that makes street lights flicker like warning signs. At 2:17 a.m., a silent alarm went off inside Altcourse Prison, a Category B facility known for its size, its pressure, and its contradictions. The alarm wasn't triggered by a fight, a breakout attempt, or a medical emergency. It came from a cell that, according to the official registry, wasn't supposed to exist. Two officers, Senior Custody Officer Mark Tyndall and his trainee Emily Rhodes, were the first to respond. They rushed down C Wing, where heavy metal doors lined long corridors lit by dim, industrial lights. The unit was quiet, unusually quiet, as if the entire prison was holding its breath. "Check the panel again," Tyndall whispered, leaning over the control monitor. The screen displayed a pulsing red dot labeled C, 213B. Rhodes frowned. "Sir, there is no 213B. We end at 213A. The alarm kept pulsing. One red heartbeat after another. They moved, radios silent, footsteps echoing. When they reached the far end of the wing, they found something that made Rhodes stop cold. There was a door where no door should be. Painted the same dull blue-gray as the rest of the wall, it blended into the background, invisible unless someone looked closely. Tyndall brushed dust from the metal. "How long has this been here?" Rhodes didn't answer. She didn't know. The small, square observation window was blacked out. A heavy slide bolt had been sealed with dried paint, meaning it hadn't been opened for a long time, maybe years. Yet inside, a motion sensor was active. Something or someone had triggered it. They called it in, and minutes later, Governor Miles Harrington arrived. Calm, collected, the kind of leader who could stand in chaos without blinking. But the moment he saw the door, his expression changed. Only for a second, but Rhodes saw it. A flicker of recognition or fear. He ordered everyone back. "No one goes in until I authorize it." "But sir," Tyndall said, something moved inside. Harrington didn't respond. He just stared at the sealed bolt, jaw tight, as if fighting an internal decision. Finally, he exhaled. "Break it open." The maintenance team arrived and cut through the layers of paint and rust. As the slide bolt cracked loose, a faint smell drifted out, stale air mixed with something metallic. The kind of smell that makes you think of forgotten rooms and forgotten secrets. The door groaned as it opened. Inside was a tiny cell, barely large enough for a bed and a small desk. Dust coated the floor. A single light flickered overhead, as if struggling to stay alive. But the strangest thing was on the bed, a neatly folded prison uniform, untouched by dust, as if placed there recently. Rhodes stepped closer. Was someone living here? "No," Harrington said too quickly. "This unit was closed years ago." Tyndall found something on the desk, an old composition notebook, the cover faded. Inside, page after page of handwritten notes filled the lines. Dates, names, wing numbers, and one repeated sentence, scrawled dozens of times. "He never left." The governor stepped forward. "No one touches that. Not yet." But Rhodes was staring at the last page. The ink was darker, fresher. A new entry. Tonight, at 2:17 a.m., they finally found the door. Her stomach dropped. "Sir," she whispered, "this was written less than an hour ago." The three of them froze. Because the cell was empty. And according to the records, no inmate had been assigned here since 2009. Yet someone had been inside. Someone who knew they were coming. Someone who wrote about it. The governor swallowed hard. "We need to search the entire wing." But before they could move, Rhodes noticed something else, a small scrape of boot marks on the dusty floor, leading away from the bed and stopping right behind them at the doorway. And that was when the corridor lights flickered, then went out. The man in the blind spot. The corridor lights snapped back on after only 3 seconds, but to Rhodes, it felt like a lifetime. When the blue-white bulbs flickered awake, the first thing she saw was the empty stretch of hallway. No intruder. No movement. Nothing out of place except their own heavy breathing. But Tyndall stepped forward and crouched. "Look at this," he said quietly. On the floor outside the hidden cell, in the thin, settling dust, was the imprint of a single footprint. Faint but unmistakable. Not barefoot. Not a guard boot either. Something older, flatter, like a worn prison shoe. It pointed away from the cell toward the C-Wing stairwell. Rhodes looked up at Governor Harrington, expecting orders. Instead, she found him staring down the corridor, his hands clasped behind his back, jaw clenched. He seemed frozen in place, not from shock, but from calculation, as if deciding what version of this night would be allowed into the official record. The radio on Tyndall's vest crackled to life. Control to C-Wing. Motion sensors triggered in the lower corridor. Possible movement past stairwell 3. The governor finally spoke. "We move. Now." They descended the stairwell quickly, each step echoing with the hollow rhythm of adrenaline. The lower corridor was colder, lit by blue security lights that cast long shadows over the walls. Altcourse was quiet at night, but this was different. This was the hush of something watching them. Rhodes could feel it. At the end of the corridor stood Officer Patel, one of the night guards. She looked visibly shaken. "Sir, I saw someone down here." Tyndall stiffened. "Who?" I don't know," Patel said. "I was doing my round. Heard footsteps. Thought it was you lot. Then I saw a figure near the storage rooms. Tall. Wearing, I don't know, dark clothes. But when I called out they were gone." "Gone where?" Harrington demanded. Patel pointed to the far end, the old utility junction where several corridors branched into maintenance rooms. Dark places. Quiet places. Places barely anyone visited anymore. They moved as a group, radios low, nerves high. The walls felt tighter here, as though the prison was closing in around them, guiding them towards something they weren't meant to find. When they reached the junction, Rhodes noticed the CCTV camera above their heads. The lens was cracked, not shattered, but scratched deeply, almost deliberately, like someone had taken a sharp object and dragged it across the glass. Tyndall tried the maintenance room door. Locked. "Control," he called softly into his radio. "We need a remote unlock on room M2. Static answered. No voice. No confirmation. "Try again," Harrington said. Tyndall did. Still nothing. The governor tightened his grip on his flashlight. Manual override. Step back. He struck the door hard with his shoulder. The metal groaned, but didn't budge. He tried again. On the third hit, the lock snapped and the door swung open. The room inside was dark except for a faint blue glow from a malfunctioning overhead bulb. The air smelled like dust and cold concrete. At first glance, the room looked empty. Then Rhodes saw something on the floor, a folded piece of paper, placed neatly in the center like an offering. Tyndall picked it up, holding it under the dim light. It was a page torn from the same notebook found inside the hidden cell. One sentence was written across the page. "You're close, but you still don't know what he did." Rhodes felt a chill run up her spine. Who is he? But the governor wasn't looking at the note. He was staring at the wall behind them, at a thin, dusty streak on the concrete, as if something had been dragged across it recently. Something heavy. Something that left a faint line. A line that led to another door. A door they hadn't noticed. A door marked M2B, another room that wasn't supposed to exist. Rhodes stepped forward. "Sir, this room isn't on the blueprint." Harrington closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if remembering something he wished he hadn't. When he opened them again, he said the words that made Rhodes' stomach drop. "It shouldn't be. That room was sealed after the 2014 incident." Rhodes blinked. "What incident?" The governor stared at the door. "The one we were never supposed to speak about again." The sealed room. Rhodes felt the corridor tighten around her as the weight of the governor's words sank in. A sealed room. A buried incident. Something so serious that even seasoned officers like Tyndall were shifting uneasily, exchanging glances that said more than they were willing to admit out loud. Governor Harrington stepped toward the old metal door marked M2B, running his hand across the surface. The dust thickened near the edges, except for a thin, deliberate swipe across the lock, a mark that was unmistakably recent. Rhodes' voice was steady, but inside her pulse hammered against her chest. "Sir, what happened in here in 2014? Harrington didn't look at her. "We lost someone. An inmate who was different. Intelligent. Manipulative. Dangerous in ways that didn't always make sense on paper. After his death, this room was sealed. Permanently. Death." Tyndall asked. "Or suicide?" Harrington inhaled sharply. "Unresolved." Patel swallowed hard. "So you think he's back?" "No," the governor said. "But someone wants us to think he is." Rhodes exchanged a look with Tyndall, a look filled with questions neither dared to ask. The governor snapped the lock open with a master key he produced from his pocket. A key he clearly hoped he would never have to use again. The door groaned open. A stale wave of cold air escaped, smelling faintly of damp concrete and metallic dust. Rhodes lifted her torch and stepped inside, the beam cutting through the blue-tinted gloom. The room was small, bare. A concrete cell with no windows, no bed, no signs of life. Only a single chair in the center, bolted to the floor, and an old CCTV unit mounted high in the corner, long dead. But the walls were covered in writing. Not carved, written. Black ink, layered in frantic strokes, circling the room in uneven spirals of words. Sentences repeating themselves. Names scratched out. Dates lined up and crossed through. Rhodes stepped closer. Some of the writing was smeared, faded by time, but other parts looked newer, fresher, as if someone had added to the walls recently. "It was never like this," Harrington whispered. His voice cracked slightly. "When we sealed the room, the walls were clean." Tyndall lifted his torch to the ceiling. "Something's off. The dust line, see it? Someone has been in here within the last day. Maybe hours." Rhodes approached the left wall. A cluster of sentences caught her eye, the ink darker, sharper, as if written with purpose. "They won't tell the truth. The inmates know more than the staff. Watch who walks in the blind spots." Her heart quickened. Patel called out suddenly. "There's something under the chair." Rhodes crouched, shining her torch beneath the bolted metal seat. A small object lay against the floor, flat, rectangular, dusty at the edges. She reached in and pulled it out. A prison identification card. She stared at the name printed on it. Stared long enough that her breath caught in her throat. "Tyndall, this can't be right." He stepped closer and froze when he saw it. The ID belonged to a former inmate. The same inmate the governor had just said died in 2014. Patel took a step back. "No, that's impossible. That man was buried. I saw the file myself." Harrington's face drained of color, as though every ghost from the past had suddenly stepped into the room with them. That card was destroyed. Everything connected to him was destroyed. "Clearly not everything," Rhodes said. Before anyone could speak again, the corridor lights flickered. Once, twice, then cut out completely. Total darkness swallowed the room. A loud metallic sound echoed from the corridor outside. A door slamming shut. Footsteps, fast, deliberate, moving away from them. Someone was out there, and whoever it was had been waiting for this moment. The blue corridors of truth. The night shift at Rikers carried a different kind of silence, one that stretched long across the blue-toned corridors and hummed beneath the fluorescent lights. Detective Mara Ellison walked through the administrative wing with a folder tucked under her arm, each step echoing softly like a question yet to be answered. She had spent weeks piecing together timelines, statements, and security logs. Now, the missing details were finally forming into something coherent, something unsettling. Inside the observation room, a wall of screens displayed various live camera feeds from different units. The images rendered in muted blues, a standard filter used during low-light hours, made everything appear colder and sharper. Mara stood still, watching the feeds, as if the walls themselves might reveal what had been hidden. She opened the folder. Inside were transcripts from interviews with officers and inmates who had been present during the night of the incident. Every account repeated the same phrase, "I didn't see anything." Not suspicious on its own, but together, too synchronized, too rehearsed. A knock on the door broke her concentration. Officer Ramirez stepped in, carrying a small transparent case. "We reviewed the ventilation shafts, like you asked," he said. "Maintenance found this wedged between one of the vents." Inside the case was a compact audio recorder, dusty, scratched, but unmistakably intact. Mara's heartbeat quickened, though her expression remained calm. Where exactly was it found? Administrative level. Ventilation run above Corridor B. Right above the section where the monitoring blackout had happened. She placed the recorder on the table, the blue screen glow reflecting off its surface. "Good work. I'll have tech run a clean extraction tonight." Ramirez nodded. "You think this has what we need?" Mara exhaled quietly. If it was left deliberately, then yes. Someone wanted the truth to survive. As soon as Ramirez left, she closed the blinds, dimmed the lights, and connected the device to the lab workstation. The file directory appeared instantly, several short audio clips, all time-stamped the night of the incident. She pressed play. The audio crackled, filled with low mechanical hums from the ventilation system. Then voices, distant but clear enough to recognize as two officers. Their tones were calm, discussing something routine, until one sentence cut through the background. "Cameras down. Move now, before the next rotation." Mara froze. She replayed the sentence. There was no mistaking it. The blackout wasn't an accident. It wasn't a malfunction. It was coordinated. Her throat tightened. Everything she had suspected, everything buried under silence and blue-washed explanations, was now undeniable. But it also meant that the conspiracy reached deeper than she had calculated, deeper than she had been prepared for. She copied the files to an encrypted drive and secured the recorder in a lockbox. As she prepared to leave the room, one last camera feed caught her eye. A corridor lit in soft blue, empty. Then slowly, a shadow appeared at the far end. A tall figure, motionless, watching. Mara leaned closer to the screen. The figure turned away just as the feed glitched. A brief flicker, then normal again. She straightened, jaw tensed. Someone knew she had found something. Someone was already watching her. And the blue corridors of Rikers, silent, cold, unforgiving, suddenly felt much narrower than before.